welcome to Nahum Romero Zamora.
Rooted in the skies, as we walked from the beginnings of time, we looked up to find ourselves in a tale made of lights. And in that story, we are all immersed, a story we now know as the One Verse. So, hello and welcome everyone. It's an honor to be with you today. My name is Nahum and I'm an artist. I was born in a place that is called the navel of the moon, which is the meaning of the word Mexico. Our indigenous people were in a constant dialogue with the cosmos. They built cities that spoke to the stars, where serpents descended with shadows during the equinox, and they carved monumental stones to share with us the story of the sun and the passing of time. This ancient culture, along with many others around the world, had a deep connection with space. It was present in their songs and dances, in their temples and rituals, and this is why I believe that space and art is perhaps one of the oldest cultural expressions, and I am humbled to be part of this tradition. So, for the last 15 years, I have been immersed in the space sector, designing space missions for artistic purposes, flying and performing in zero gravity, and launching artworks into the International Space Station. And I also founded the Cosmica Institute, a space organization dedicated just to the cultural aspect of space activities and also to explore our connection with the universe. I have worked with space agencies all over the world and trained future astronauts as well. So, as novel as this might sound, I want you to know that artists have always envisioned our future in space. These journeys were almost like predicted, like psychics foreseeing the future, just to see how our journey throughout the cosmos could unfold. And take, for example, the Ukrainian artist Kazimir Malevich. In 1915, he was working on his series Suprematism, and he was sketching in a piece of paper curves and lines to depict a vision that would convey poetically our current day space technologies. So artists have always envisioned these journeys throughout the cosmos before science and engineering and billionaires did. But also today, artists are doing something very important. Artists are formulating critical questions about our current approaches to space, because we know that historically, any culture that is not critical with itself becomes toxic over time. And we have to remember that space activities are the result of the work of powerful nations and some wealthy individuals that reinforce narratives of gender, race, economic, and expansionist ideals that have proven very ineffective on Earth to achieve justice and equality for many fellows. March 13, 1962. Dear Miss Halpern, President Kennedy has asked this office to thank you for your recent letter. Your willingness to serve in your country as a volunteer woman astronaut is commendable. However, while many women are employed in other capacities in the space program, some of them in important scientific posts, we have no present plans to employ women on space flights because of the degree of scientific and flight training and physical characteristics which are required. We appreciate your interest in and support of the nation's space program. Sincerely, Obilo Jr., Director of Public Information at NASA. One giant leap for mankind. And indeed, when Neil Armstrong was uttering these words, he was referring to mankind, a small step for a man, because not a single woman was allowed to be part of the Apollo missions, not because there weren't any sufficiently capable women to walk on the moon, but because the future was imagined in the image of men, the manosphere, as they call it today. So I wonder why.
I'm thinking if we're going to colonize.
Okay, so I wonder why this culture is happening. You know, like often when I walk in the hallways of space agencies and space conferences, I hear phrases like these
I'm
ones.
thinking if we're going to colonize and do something other than live in a habitat module.
Desire to colonize the red planet. We will establish our very first lunar colony.
First human beings are going to be stepping on the moon or Mars or into a colony in space.
Could you colonize the galaxy in 1 year? Absolutely, the entire galaxy.
And let me tell you, I come from a colonized land, and we're still going to therapy. True. So this is the point. How is it possible that we employ the latest science and technology to go to space while using cultural paradigms and approaches that are 500 years old? And yes, you know, like language is a means of communication, but also it's a carrier of culture. So what culture we're taking into space and therefore to our future? Some years ago, I was working with Cosmica in a refugee shelter in Berlin. And there was a young Syrian girl who came up with an idea. This was written by her. I am the moon, and I have been with Earth during millions of years. I've seen it changing, continents moving, and asteroids crashing. Throughout time, I have seen some tiny beings move inside of it. Every night, they make the Earth blink in the dark. On one peaceful day, I watched a silver object dancing around me. It landed, and from inside, I saw two tiny beings walking out. They jumped around and raised a flag that made me tickle. After having some fun, they flew back home. Soon after, another group of creatures came to visit me. They walked around and collected stones and dust. After a few visits, I believed I knew everything about these creatures. It was pretty simple. They all looked the same and sounded the same. But one day, things changed. and a new group of tiny beings came to visit me. But now they looked different from each other and spoke in melodies that I had never heard before. Carefully, they scratched me, and they planted a fragile, colorful thing. It was red and full of scent. The earthly creatures call it a rose. I called it a friend. And I want you to imagine for a second that instead of like having these gestures towards the universe, we go there, we go to the moon with our heavy machinery and start drilling and extracting resources. Maybe one day we will look at the moon and we will see that it has a dent, no? As if it was bitten, like an apple. Or imagine looking at Saturn's rings through a telescope just to find that there are gaps within the rings. And this might be true, no? Like maybe one day we will be talking about the anthropocosmos, an era of human interference in the universe, as companies all around the world are rolling the spreadsheets and crunching the numbers to see how to profit out of the so-called space resources. And just look at what is happening at our planet, right? Right now, the orbit around the planet is covered by 1 million particles of space junk as we speak. And the truth is that the cosmos is not a resource, just as Earth has never been. Reducing this world and others into mere places to be conquered and extracted, it will just take us down a path that we already know on this planet. So this is the thing. This is why it's important to listen to artists that are painting new visions for our future in space, to storytellers that are writing new ways of engaging with the universe with care, compassion, and kindness, to inspire the imagination crisis that we have on our planetary home, Earth. And also to be provocative. And this is something that artists do really well. So very often when I am in the space community, I ask these kind of questions, like, what if we slow down the pace of space technology developments? Because humans, we've been really good at coming up with new inventions without fully understanding the consequences of such technological developments. Second, should we really expand ourselves into other parts of the cosmos? If what we have done to this planet is a blueprint of what humans can do in a celestial body, perhaps we need to go back to the drawing board and rethink what kind of relationship we have with a celestial body. So many artists, including myself, we are proposing this necessary shift from expansionist and growth dreams to a focus on the intimacy of depth, a depth that acknowledges that we are earthbound and interconnected with other beings and existences, a depth that realizes that we live in an incredible planet, a depth that is able to find gratitude to the most elemental ingredients of existence, be it water, be it stone, be it air. A depth that can pave the way to heal our relationship with each other and with the more than human worlds. So artists have long invited us to relate to the cosmos in many other ways, from our ancestors' rituals to artists today that are making works in spacecrafts. And I want to tell you about an experience that I had in a spacecraft. I prepared myself to do some performances in zero gravity. I trained for this. And once I was there, floating for the first time, I just couldn't feel my body. Every point of myself, every cell in my body were weightless. In that moment where I was suspended for the first time, me and nothingness, we were the same thing. I became the void. And it was until I saw a floating body flying in front of me that I just rushed with my arms open and I grabbed this poor person that was floating and I just hold this person. And in that act of feeling the other, I was able to feel myself again and stabilize my systems. And it was a beautiful gesture, as if the universe was telling me, you can only exist if we are together. And this is what happened. Gracias.
Oh, my beautiful Mexican space cowboy. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nahum. What is not as beautiful is now asking the questions that not quite as easy. But I have few.
Yes.
And also, if you guys have, I'd love to hear them. I love the thought that you've said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you said something like new technology and service to old paradigms.
Uh-huh.
Right? You said we're using the paradigms like colonization and then pushing new technology into those old paradigms, right? So what would be an ideal future? How do we change those paradigms? What do we do? And when you talk to people who are into science and space technology, do you feel heard? Do you feel understood? Do you feel like the paradigm's changing?
Oh, I mean, wow, really good questions. I mean, first thing that I will have to say is that normally, I mean, the space sector is a very conservative sector, right? And maybe they might not be aware, but it carries the genes of Christianity and manifest destiny and the next frontier, and we have to go to other lands and all that, no? So So yes, it's rooted in perhaps ideas they are not even consciously aware of. And every time that they, and this happened with so many other fields, once you try to have some interdisciplinarity, because they don't know the language, they don't know what cultural scholars and experts talk about, they get very scared. And therefore their discourses and narratives, they never get like updated. And the result is that we have a very colonial extractionist approach to the universe. So I think the first step is to start opening the doors so we can have these conversations, because at the end of the day, a lot of the work that is happening in the space sector, but also in others, it has to be interdisciplinary. Right? I mean, we cannot exclude the humanities and the arts, and something that we do is exactly this, not like critical thinking, to question in the same way that science asks questions about everything. We also do that, but from a cultural point of view. So sometimes being critical comes across being negative, but again, what I said, if we don't question our own assumptions, for sure we're going to become very toxic at some point. And we see signs of this happening in many places, and that's something that we have to work to stop.
So would you say that the point of the art, as you apply it, is to provoke a new line of thought? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes, I mean, art means so many things, right? There's space on art that ranges from the inspiration to the illustration, but also to the new thoughts and new world building. And, I mean, you just have to imagine, like, if we're talking about, I was speaking about this with someone recently, if we're talking about building new worlds, how it cannot be political, right? So I think we need to lose the fear of having honest and candid conversations about being political in a critical way. The moment that you shut the door and you let a bunch of engineers decide philosophical or ethical issues, then dangerous. No, I think there are experts for every field, and artists certainly have a very good skill set.
How did you end up in space science? Like, for me as a layman, a more intuitive connection would be maybe art and astronomy, and the space tech just seems like you really are pushing it.
Yeah, well, it happened. I was invited to participate in the creation of a new committee within the Space Federation, which was going to be about art and culture, with Roger Malina and Nicola Triscott. So I said yes. I was very young, and I got very excited. No? So in the beginning, it was all fascination, and then I wanted to train as an astronaut and cosmonaut. So I was studying in different parts of the world, and then I became faculty of the Space University and training future astronauts on the humanities and space feminisms and all these things that we love in the humanities. And it's been, a journey of 15 years.
I freaking bet.
Yes, long.
Sounds like quite a journey. Do you think art is a universal language?
Gosh.
Every
time I hear like universality and something for all, I'm a little bit skeptic. It's true that different art forms hit people in different ways. I mean, music is I think is the most universal thing. I mean, rarely you find someone that doesn't like music, but it always touches us, no? And I mean, just look at us, no? Like everything we do is culture. Really, no, it's like we have created like stories, no, from the economy. I mean, that's a story from that. When you look at the map and you see, the borders,
the nation states.
Those are stories, and people died for those stories. They are not like objective realities of the cosmos. So we're cultural beings, and therefore we are immersed in these stories. So going back and realizing that we have some author agency in writing these stories, it's very powerful, no? Even though we have created these mega stories that subdue us and enslave many humans, we still have control over these stories.
The reason why I'm asking is that if questioning or critiquing the current paradigms is your goal, I would expect to pick a very effective medium. So that's why I'm asking if it's a universal language, because I feel like if we need to stop the colonization now, that we need to take a method or vehicle that like gets to those people like right now. Right? And so there must be something else why you picked art and why this is your vehicle of questioning the status quo.
Well, I think there are like two languages, maybe three, that go very deep into the fabric of what we do. That is science, like pure science, then maybe philosophy and art. Everything else on top of that is just like the applications of these ideas, of these imaginaries, of these discoveries into so many things, and then trading and all that. So I always wanted to work on the most essential layer that I could, and I cannot do science, so I do art. I work with poetry in my head, so that's how I work.
Last chance, ladies and gentlemen. See, they're blown away. Nahum, thank you so much. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.